Hey, what's up? I'm X, and welcome back to the 4 Idiots series, the series where I show you how to do content in RuneScape as quickly and efficiently as possible. Today we're going to tackle a big one, which is the Theater of Blood, or TOB, as we will continue to refer to it as. Please like, comment, and sub and stuff so that this video is recommended when people search for Theater of Blood guides. This is going to be my one and only disclaimer, and if you ignore this disclaimer, then the comments will aid me in making fun of you. There are a million different ways to do TOB. Some people really say that you have to learn Xarpus scythe walking right away. Some people say that you should be doing this, or that, or the other thing. But what I am interested in teaching you is the basics of TOB, what the bosses do, and what you should do to them. I encourage you to pick up tips and tricks that work for you as you practice and use this guide as a baseline, though I will still be showing off some of the other methods that you can do, just slowly introduce them as you get more comfortable. TOB is a team-based raid, and there are a couple different roles with different responsibilities. The only way that I can cover these without this being a 40-minute video is to explain the rooms and the quick differences between the roles. I'm also going to be including some terms and things that you'll run into when you pair randomly with teams so you're not lost. Now let's get right into it. To do TOB, you actually only need to finish the Priest in Peril quest to get here, though I'd heavily recommend completing the quest A Taste of Hope for the Draken's Medallion, which teleports you right to the center of the Theater of Blood. You don't need any skills aside from as high combats as you have, or the lowest that your teammates are willing to accept. For gear, you're going to want to really build as strongly into offensive melee slash as you can, with very minimal switches for range and mage. A very cost-effective but still good setup for learners is Elite Void with a Tentacle Whip. If you only have regular Void, then go away and go and do the bare minimum. Do not burden your teammates with your laziness. Here are a couple setups at a couple different price points. Void will have more supplies but take more damage. Bandos and Torval will take less damage but have less supplies. Good main hand weapons at the time of recording are Scythe, Noxious Halberd, Blade of Saldor, and an Abyssal Tentacle, and there is some functionality for the Soul Reaper Axe, but taking damage, I wouldn't recommend it for learners. Your inventory is going to fluctuate depending on what role you're assigned in your team, but a good base is that you're going to want a minimum of a 4-way range switch, 4-way magic switch, a good DPS spec weapon like a Crystal Halberd, Dragon Claws, or something like that, a defense-reducing special attack weapon like a Bandos Godsword or an Elder Maul or Warhammer, and an Enchanted Salve Amulet which you will be dropping after the second rune, so get a lot of those before we start. What you bring in your rune pouch will be dependent on your role, but it will either be Thralls with the Book of the Dead, Ice Barrage, or Vengeance and Potshare. We'll be covering the basics today, but those are always possibilities. Let's finally get into those pesky roles I've been talking about. TOB has a maximum of 5 roles. The difficulty scales to 5, but never lower than 3, meaning that solos and duos will always be as difficult as trios are. The more players, the easier it can be, but I find the sweet spot to be in a confident 3-man or semi-confident 4-mans. Also, less people to steal your hard-earned money is always best. The basic trio roles are the core, and the 4th and 5th role are supplementary. Here are the core roles now. North Freeze, which is usually abbreviated to NFRZ. This role is responsible for freezing the northern Nylocas during the first room. They are also typically the melee at the third room, so they will bring a fast attacking melee weapon. They will also need Ice Barrage to freeze, and magic gear that provides a magic bonus of at least 140 plus to avoid splashing on Nylocas. You can check out the Nylocas wiki page for more info on how to make sure that you're wearing the right setup here. Keep in mind your prayers also contribute to this bonus, so you'll have to do a little math. South Freeze, usually abbreviated to SFRZ. This role is responsible for freezing the southern Nylocas during the first room. They are also typically the mage role at the third room, so they will usually bring a little bit more magic damage and gear for that. They will also need Ice Barrage to freeze. Range DPS, usually abbreviated to RDPS. This role is responsible for doing damage to the Nylocas that are frozen by the other 2 roles, while also pushing the boss past thresholds to make those crabs spawn. They will also be the Ranger role at the third room, so they will need to bring a blowpipe. They will alternate between Thralls or Vengeance Potshare depending on what the team is looking for. The 4th and 5th roles are also DPS roles. In 4-mans, you'll add a melee DPS. In 5, you'll add both a melee and a mage DPS. Now you and your friends are geared up. Head over to the board in the middle of the castle and either create a party or join a friends. The party leader can change around the order of the team by using the arrows on the right side. The team order has a couple mechanics in the theater, but usually it's prioritization of tank or team-based calling. Once your team is ready, make sure that you're all in the same hub party panel and then pre-pot at the bank and head in. We are going to talk about our first boss, a Maiden of Sugadinti. The Maiden is a big Hispori lady who throws blood around and pisses me off. People will usually drop an item or two for inventory space right before the gate and then all rush in. You are going to pray magic the entire time, run in, and then Warhammer or BGS the boss. BGS people, please remember to wait until all the hammers have gone first. Everyone is going to work on damaging the Maiden. Every so often, the Maiden will spin around and throw blood where each player was standing, and 3 blood splats for the person that was standing furthest away from her. If you're up close and meleeing her, the best way to avoid this attack is to just move back or away before she goes to attack, just like this. If players stand in blood, they will take rapid damage and spawn little blood spawns who will float around the arena and make more blood trails. These guys can be frozen and quickly taken care of. The Maiden will target whoever is closest to her, tiebreakers usually ending up being the orb order or positioning of the team. Keep damaging the Maiden, and then at 70, 50, and 30% of her HP, she will spawn Nylocas, or crabs as we like to call them, on the northern and southern walls. Depending on your scale, she will not always spawn all of them, but there can be 8 instances of crabs total. It is a little bit before the 70, 50, and 30% thresholds that the North Freeze and South Freeze will be switching into their mage gear and preparing to freeze the crabs to prevent them from getting in. If they get in, they will heal the Maiden and make her a lot stronger. To do this, the Northern Mage is going to freeze their 1s and 2s immediately, numbered from left to right, while waiting for the 3s and 4s to converge in the middle. The Southern Mage will be doing the exact same thing but for the South. The Southern Mage has a little less time as the first crab spawn is a little closer to the Maiden than the North. The North Mage will freeze the 3s as they converge with the South's 3s and get them all stuck there. The South Mage will then freeze all of the 4s towards the same area, so that they are quickly barrageable or chinnable down. This is a good time for players to get their HP back via Blood Barrage. The RDPS roll will head south and help the South Mage with the Straggler single crab and then get back on the boss. The Northern MDPS will help the North Mage with their solo crabs and then get back on the boss. This cycle repeats until the fight ends. If you and your team are having trouble, it may be easier for you to divide the crabs across the DPS rolls. The standards being N13, N24, S13, and S24s for 4 separate rolls to help with freezing. Once the room is finished, pick up the items that you dropped before the room and head this way into the next room, the Pestilent Bloat. Bloat is a big boy. The room is incredibly simple, but ask any professional tobber what room they die at the most and, well, reason being is that it's a deceptively simple room, and people will try to get fancy and then get everybody killed. Bloat runs around his little path here. He has little lights on him that indicate if he's active or not. If the lights are off and they're blinking, then he is ready to be hit. To start this room, make sure everybody has their salves on. I find it easier to send in 1 player to the room to start. More players is just chaotic. I also like to tag him and his true tile so that he's a little easier to see through the big chamber in the middle. Get your DPS special attacking weapons ready, and get ready to click on the door when you see him blink or start to slow down. When he does, run at him and hit him with everything you have. Try to stand on the side of him that's closer to a corner of the chamber. The amount of hits you can do will depend on what weapon you're using. He goes down for about 30 ticks, so divide your weapon by that. Scythes can usually get about 5 hits. Crystal Halberd Speckers, please remember that you should only be specking with it as your last hit when you're learning, as it has a very long attack timer delay. Most players will be standing 1 tile away when they spec with the Crystal Halberd for the distance advantage. Once he begins to wake up, or you've done the right amount of hits, run around the corner and try to put yourself diagonal to him at all times. He'll do a stomp attack that will damage you if you're in his line of sight. Max hit being 80 damage. While this guide is for idiots, I must advise that if you think that you're going to die to the stomp damage, you can tick eat by eating when the screen shakes. A simple guide for this room is if he's northwest, I'm southeast. He will begin to chase around the arena and damage you rapidly with flies if he sees you. These will bounce between you and your teammates, so do try to avoid them if possible. Pray range to reduce the damage. The real killer during this fight is the falling feet and hands that will happen while you're running around. They will immobilize you and do about 20 to 40 damage. Stay close to the chamber and avoid the shadows on the ground as best as you can. They won't fall in the same place twice in a row. You can also tile skip through them if you need to. I find that the easiest way to avoid this is to click my tiles individually so that I can turn on a dime if he turns around. Keep an eye on him just in case he does that. When he blinks again, repeat the process from the beginning. This should be done in about 2 to 3 cycles, or 4 if you've got particularly low DPS. Just don't get fancy and you'll be fine. After he dies, drop your salve amulet on the ground and head over to the chest. Make sure that you do not click the door early. Depending on if you died or how much damage and contribution you did, you will have points to spend at the chest here. Most players will buy a stamina here if they didn't bring one in, or a potato or a shark if they're expecting to take damage, or if they just have a surplus of points. There is going to be 1 more chest checkpoint throughout the raid that you can spend the remainder of your points on, so don't worry about them now. Next up, we have the Nylocas room, otherwise known as the Scourge of My Existence. The roles that were decided before you came into the raid are going to be what you'll be attacking with here. The meleeers will use the ham joints, swift blades, and more recently Mockweedle and Tomatoli, and a tentacle works fine for your first couple of raids. If there are multiple meleeers, take one on east side and one on the west side to divide the responsibilities a little bit. Mages will be using a combo of Barrage and Trident, Rangers will be using their blowpipes. When you're ready, head into the room. The room is just a basic tower defense encounter. There will be little green, silver, and blue crabs that will come down to munch your pillars or beat you up. The ranger will shoot all the green ones, the meleeer will hit all of the white ones, and the major will handle the blue ones. In 4 mans, you will have 2 melees, and in 5 mans, you will have 2 majors and 2 melees. Pray offensively and pray defensively against any aggressive Nylocas who are in the center of the room. Also make sure to get these guys quick so they don't wipe out your team. Most of them will be going towards the pillars though. Keep in mind that they do explode if they're on a field for too long. Those hits can add up if you're near them. If a player hits a Nylo with the wrong attack style, they will be unable to hit them again. They will also change colors if they're around for a very long time as well. Players comfortable with the room will usually have no problem keeping all of the pillars alive. If one of the pillars looks like it's going to go down, then you and your teammates need to be above 30 HP. If you're struggling to keep the pillars alive, decide with your team one pillar that you will be keeping alive no matter what. Then when you get more comfortable, try to keep them all alive. Prioritize the little Nylocas over the big ones. The big ones break into 2 Nylocas, which will fill up the cap in the room of how many Nylocas are allowed in the room at a time. If you reach this cap, you will be stalled and the room will take longer, which you don't want in an endurance fight. Do your best to hit the right things with the right stuff. Once all the little guys have gone away, there will be a brief pause and a huge Nylocas will come down from the ceiling. He's the exact same color schemes as the little ones, but with the scary addition of reflecting all of the improper damage he takes. It is significantly more important to get your prayers right first and then to change to your gear as quickly as possible, even if the room takes longer because of it. The melee phase cannot hit through your prayer, but the others can, and make sure that if you get a lot of mage phases that you groan and say that this raid is ridiculous, because those are not their high DPS phases. Keep this up until he dies, and congratulations, you did it. Great job. As you're running to the next room, players are going to shout out in what cardinal direction they'll be fighting the boss and what phase of the boss they'll be speccing him on. So, Southeast 2-3, I will be standing on the southeast tiles and speccing on the 2nd and 3rd phases. Speaking of which, the next room we have is Sotetseg, which is my favorite room and I will not hear anything bad about him. He's a big red dark beast who sits on his little spot. In front of him is a gigantic grid, and the grid is really all you have to worry about in this whole room. Run in praying magic and go off to the area that you said you were going to, and spec when you said that you would. Sot has really high defense, so speccing him down is really important. Sot will shoot out these little red and silver balls, red being prey mage and silver being prey range. He can also melee, so anytime you aren't praying against one of the balls, pray melee. You have until the little balls reach you to pray against them. At 66.6% of his HP and 33.3% of his HP, he will send you back to the other side of the grid that you started on. He will divide you and your teammates to solve a maze that only one other teammate can see. If you are chosen, a big white text will show up on the screen that says you are chosen. In the event that you are the chosen one, stand on the first red tile that is closest to you on the edge, just like this. This will make it appear for the other people on the other side. At this point, we will move 2 more tiles outward. Now that may be as simple as moving just 2 more tiles or following a small path out 2 more tiles. The moment that we pass the 3rd row, a tornado will chase down the team and blow them up if it reaches them. Your job is to stand on that 3rd tile and give it a couple seconds to establish or tell your teammates that you're ready, then run the maze alongside the red tiles. Don't be fancy for the start and don't kill your teammates. Simply run along the lines and you'll be fine. I've left a link to a Sotetseg maze trainer in the description for you to practice as well. Make sure you also stand on the last tile, as if you skip it, they won't necessarily know where it ends. Head through the portal and you're good. If you're one of the people following the maze, simply stand where it's red and hope your teammates aren't morons. If they are a moron at the beginning of the maze, that's unlucky, you'll get them next time. But if they're stupid towards the end, just run out of the maze and you'll take some explosion damage and hurt your teammates, but as long as you live, then you're the protagonist. Once you're out of the maze, spec it if it's your turn to do so, and then carry on like before. Sot also has a large energy ball that he throws out every once in a while. This will do all of your HP worth of damage unless you tick eat it, or more commonly, split it amongst your teammates. Stand on this tile here if the chat says that you've been selected for the ball. Your teammates will join you to lessen the damage by a manageable amount. Please be cautious of melees and stray magic orbs at this position because it's hard to tell who has what. Keep on trucking, and that's Sotetseg. After going back through the barrier here, you will be met by your second and final chest for supplies. This will be the last chest that you will have access to before the final boss, and the final boss is all you're really going to be buying supplies here for. I like to have, at the minimum, 4 restores, 1 stamina, a butt ton of brews, and maybe a hard food if you think that you'll need to combo eat. At this point, drop any half doses of potions that you can spare, and your teammates will be doing the same. Mix and match to see if anybody can make full potions. Once you've spent all your points, and decanted, and bought your friend's stuff, head into the next room. Next up, we have Xarpus. Xarpus is a super easy no supply room, and you really shouldn't be using anything here. There's 3 phases to Xarpus, and they're all very simple. For beginners, you're going to start in your melee gear and do a Warhammer or a BGS, and then switch to your ranged gear, and then back into your melee gear for the final phase. For phase 1, everyone enter the room and spread out. Most players are going to keep the area that they stood in Sotetseg for simplicity. I was southeast, so I'm going to stay in southeast for Xarpus. These little green skeleton guys are going to pop up around the arena. Your job is to step on them and prevent Xarpus from healing or being more powerful. Stand on top of them and wait for the skeleton to go away, and repeat this process until the phase is over. If a teammate beats you to a skeleton, you move, not them. This is the best way to do it. Once there is a lull in the skeleton spawning, phase 2 will start. Stand on one of these tiles, either north, south, east, or west, and get your BGS and hammers ready. Spec him 2 times, and then head off to the corner that you were starting in. Put on your ranged gear and attack Xarpus. The blowpipe is great. All you have to do is pray rigor and shoot him. Move when he looks at you. Move 2 tiles from where you were standing. We're going to move in a formation like this to keep the acid tiles clean. Other players may be doing the melee method, and while I don't recommend this for learners, if you do ever want to practice this, simply stand on any of these marked tiles here, which are all 2 tiles out from Xarpus, and click on him as he's rotating for his next target. Try to time the step back with the time that he would be rotating his head, and you're fine. Here's an example. I wouldn't recommend that anybody does this as they're learning, but if you'd like to try it later, I would recommend coming back in an entry mode and practicing it that way. Keep doing this until Xarpus reaches less than 25% of his HP, at which point he will go scream, indicating the start of phase 3. Once phase 3 has started, stop attacking Xarpus and head to the tiles towards the middle with your melee gear on. You need to hit Xarpus wherever he isn't looking. You can wait for him to look the other way, or if possible, run to where he was looking, as he won't look the same place twice. Whips and fast weapons can usually get 2 hits in pretty reliably, and scythes can get 2 and then 1 if they're perfectly on time. If you hit Xarpus when he's looking at you, he will reflect the damage and hit you a huge amount, so be careful not to do this. After Xarpus is dead, make sure that a teammate has an inventory space for the Dawnbringer, which you can find on the skeleton before this door here. Once you have it, head in. This is the big boss here, and I hope you're ready for some top-tier explanations here, but also, we're gonna rant. Verzik Vitur is tough, but can be a lot of fun. If you find yourself, or have friends who say that they're really good at Tob rooms, just not the boss, they're basically telling you that they're a moron. Verzik is the most complicated part, but don't worry, because I've got you. Before the room even starts, head to the Sotetseg area you were in before, behind the pillars, and drop some supplies in case you die so your team can carry on without you. You can always pick up your own things later, worst case scenario. When you're ready, take a look at the ore border in the top left and see who is first. That player will start with the Dawnbringer first. The Dawnbringer is a trident with a special attack that is the only really feasible way to break Verzik's shields and move on with this phase. What you'll do is have the person with the Dawnbringer start the fight, and special attack 2 times. They will then drop the staff for the next player, which everybody else is fighting on. Everyone else should be meleeing while praying mage here. After that special attack, the Dawnbringer will be dropped for the second person, who will spec once and start making their way back to the front leftmost pillar, and ideally specking one more time there. Then they will drop the staff for the third person. You'll have to run all the way to this marked tile here to avoid being attacked by Verzik. I'd also recommend that you click into the pillar rather than the tile itself, as if you click the Dawnbringer by accident and it gets taken, you will be stalled and take damage. The third person will do their 2 specs and then drop it for the fourth person if there is one. When it isn't your turn to spec, stand behind the pillar and wait for Verzik to clap. Head in and do 2 attacks and then run right back. Some people prefer to go off when her legs are the widest, which has never made sense to me, but if that helps you, then hell yeah. After everyone has specced, the first player who specced will most likely have specced back again. That player can grab the staff, spec again, and drop it again to repeat the cycle. It is more than likely that the pillar that you've been stood behind will start to fall from the damage. When it does, make sure that nobody is along the sides of it, and as it's falling, head to the frontmost pillar on the right side. Keep doing the same thing you were doing. If this pillar goes down, then go back a pillar and try to finish there with tridents and dawnbringers if possible. Admittedly though, if you do more pillars than this one, you're probably doomed. You also don't need magic gear on for this special attack, though damaging bonus gear does help a little bit. But don't overwhelm yourself, and congratulations, you've made it to phase 2. Head off to the Sotetseg area that you were at before and stand on this little tile line here. Now this is going to be the biggest difficulty for so many beginners. This is the P2 Verzik walk. I'm going to be leaving a link to a phase 2 Verzik trainer in the description that I really encourage you use. The biggest thing to remember is that mistakes happen, and if they do, simply walk around but never be standing still during this phase. Eat up and get back into the fight when you can. Pray range here, and you're going to want to attack Verzik as soon as she's attackable. Now it's a little scary, but you're going to want to be spending as much time next to Verzik as possible, only stepping back for a millisecond. She's going to be sending explosive towards you wherever you're standing. You'll want to pop back a tile like this and then attack her until you see the green of the explosion behind you. At which point you can take a step back and then right back into melee her. If you're a little nervous about that, you can also do a V-walk like this to avoid taking slow projectiles, or just projectiles if you mess up. Whips get to hit every time, but scythes will have to skip every third attack and just kind of stand there. This movement is going to take a little bit to get into your system. Every 5 auto attacks, Verzik is going to send a little blue lightning ball that will bounce between you and your teammates, and if it hits everyone, will zap somebody for about 50 damage. So staying in formation like this, where you're all sandwiching Verzik, is really important to make sure that the blue ball hits Verzik instead. In trios, you'll stand in a large triangle-esque formation. This blue ball will also zap you if you're too far away by default. Also be careful not to step underneath her, as she will bounce you right out and do a ton of damage. If you do get bounced, simply eat up and spam click her. You will enter every time on the right attack cycle. Verzik will also occasionally spawn a couple Nylocas guys that will act as proximity explosives that will wander towards players. You can either hit them with the right attack style, freeze them, or do this thing here where you enter its explosion range and then quickly leave. Whenever there are Nylos that spawn, I advise everybody take a second to focus on them and then get back to Verzik when everybody's safe. There will also be a large purple Nylocas that will be healing Verzik. If you successfully hit this Nylocas with a poisoned weapon of any kind, it will explode and do about 75 damage. Now for phase 2.5, which starts at 35% HP, swap your range prey to prey mage. She will spawn 2 red Nylos on each side of her. After a while of being on the battlefield, they'll heal her for what HP they had when they expired. You and your side's teammates are going to work on damaging these guys down to about 20% of their HP or so. It's not worth it to hit them a lot lower than this. Once they're there, get right back on Verzik, and as soon as the red crabs spawn, Verzik will be immune to damage and actually heal for any hits that you hit her during that time. Ideally, you'll spend about 2 attacks on weakening the red crab, and that should be the perfect amount of time to get back on Verzik. Once the red crabs have been lowered enough, work on Verzik again until she ends phase 2. Now let's get into phase 3, which is deceptively simple. I'm going to start by explaining her special attacks. Every 4 auto attacks, she will do a special attack, and they will always go in this order. Crabs, which is the same attack that she does during phase 2. Simply freeze, kill, or hit and run again. Web phase. She will walk towards the middle of the room and shoot webs around that will lock you in place and do big damage to you when the webs expire. Arania boots will help you get out of these webs, but there is a cooldown, so don't keep on getting caught. Other players can also break the webs from underneath you if you get stuck. When just starting out, simply hug the wall and T-bow or trident or ice barrage or something while running clockwise around the room. Most players will be doing what is called the web walk, where they will start at 6 o'clock or this starting tile here and then melee at 9, 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock and then 12 again. Or just the left, right, top, and bottom. These webs are also tile skippable, so just maneuver around and take your time. Her third special is what most people just call yellows, and there will be 1 yellow spot on the floor for each player. You need to run to one of those tiles and be stood on it when the projectile that she launches at you lands. Most players will ping their tile ahead of time using the hub party panel, but the general rule is that if somebody beats you there, then that's theirs. Lastly is the green ball of death. Verzik will pick one player to receive the green ball, and it will also say so in chat. If you choose not to pass this ball around to negate the damage, prepare to take 74 damage, which is the preferred method of dealing with this attack. If you don't have 74 HP and don't think that you can get there in time, find a teammate and get in close proximity to them and the ball will bounce to them instead. Just try not to surprise anybody with this. That's all the special attacks. As for the rest of the fight, she's going to pick one tank right at the beginning of the fight, and it doesn't really have to change from there. The tank is going to try to not be in melee distance when she goes to attack, otherwise they risk meleeing the whole team, which can do really high damage. To tank as a learner, simply stand underneath or run away from Verzik until she attacks, and then pop out or pop back in and hit her. After a while, you may find the rhythm to be able to hit multiple times in between attacks. Players who aren't tanking will simply need to be praying mage if she stomps and it's blue, and range if it's green, while also helping the tank through the special attacks like crabs. Now that's the entire fight, but there is one more thing. At around 20% of her HP, she will spawn purple vortexes which will chase players around and damage them for half of their HP, and heal Verzik for triple that number. Players sometimes try to time pushing this threshold until after the yellow attacks, as to not deal with yellows and the vortexes at the same time. Because it does half of your HP and heals her, it's best to not eat up too high if you can help it. The moment you see her say, "I'm not finished with you just yet," grab your best DPS weapon and everybody will charge at her in spec. So make sure that you don't use your specs aside from the Dawnbringer and here. This will more often than not get her pretty close to death. Just make sure that you're running from your tornado and still doing damage. The fight won't end if you don't hit her. This is a problem that a lot of learners have. If you do get hit by the vortex, you will have a little bit before the next vortex spawns, so you can get some free damage off in the meantime. Keep your cool and don't worry if you die. This is a hard raid. Just make sure that you're paying attention to what killed you and try to avoid it next time. If everything goes well though, head to that chest room and get yourself a purple. If you want to see the stats of the raid, you can look at this little table here for the rundown. And that's it! I do want to also let you know how to get teams if you're not sure where to start. World 416 is a cesspool full of people real-world trading scythes to pay their rent, so it's not always the friendliest atmosphere. But it is free-for-all rewards by default, and you don't owe anybody the performance of your life. You can also head over to the Discord called We Do Raids or discord.gg/WDR. There are a lot of players in there at various different skill levels who are looking for pairings. Alternatively, you can join a clan which does these raids all the time, or you can join my clan called Dream and I will see you there. But regardless of how you find teams, I really appreciate you watching this far. I'd really appreciate a subscription, a like, and a comment if this video helped you. And thank you in advance, and please PM me in game if you have any questions about anything that I didn't answer here. Until next time, see ya.